with another Charmed episode review. I know, wow. Very next day, right? Well, I have a reasoning uh, behind this. Normally I would let it go for a while, but not see your review till Charmed, Season 1, Episode 8, Bugaboo. Okay, let's just ignore the title because it doesn't really describe what occurs in the episode. I want to commend the show for starting to go a little bit deeper into the mythology. I knew going into it that it wasn't going to be the same as the original show. I wasn't expecting it to be. I was expecting it to follow some certain kind of rules to make sense, but I wasn't expecting it to go along with the mythology of the original. The original has its own set of rules and its own storyline, and that's, what makes it so good. And I know I have chided this show like crazy in the past for not having a solid storyline or a solid mythology to work off of, and not really, not seeming to take the magic seriously. And this is the first episode where I've seen where I wouldn't necessarily say the girls, but I mean, magic as a whole is taken seriously, and it's the first time that you get to see the types of effects that it has on people, and that it's not always positive. I mean, yeah, you got to see this in the original show too. I mean, the sisters lost their grandmother and their mother, and they never had the ability to have a relationship with their long lost sister until she was an adult. So they lost out too, but this is a little different. So in this episode, it opens with the three of them on a chase, because apparently they've been tracking they're not sure what she is. They think she's some sort of electricity demon, but this is the same woman who stole the sais from them in the last episode, the one that was hitting on Mel at the bar. And they're trying to track her down. They track her down, and they try to take her down, but they're not successful. And she manages to use the scythe to open a fissure between our world and the underworld, freeing some sort of creature. Now, there's some misunderstandings in this episode as far as, is the creature that she released the one that's doing all this, or all the horrible stuff, or is it being confused for the actual creature that's doing all the horrible stuff? Because at first, even I thought that whatever she released was the one that was responsible, until I saw as the episode went on that it actually wasn't. I have to say that is a really good do a machina sort of thing, where the show makes you think it's one thing when it's really another. So Mel manages to track her down, and it's revealed that she's not a demon at all. She's actually a witch. Well, she's a half white lighter, half witch. And no, she's not in the same vein as Paige. Not at all. Well, we already know from the original series that relationships between white lighters and witches were unthinkable. They weren't thought of in terms of, oh my God, the world's going to end. It was just not done. It was kind of in the same... Okay, I don't want to say... you know what? I'm just not, because I could equate it to something else, but it's going to come off really bad, so I'm just not going to. It just wasn't done. And I guess Patty and Penny were unsure of what the White Lighters would do if they ever found out. I don't believe that they thought that the White Lighters would ever do harm to the child. I think that they were just worried about whether the girls would lose their legacy, whether the child would be taken away up to wherever the elders are, all sorts of different possibilities. So, but in this world, this Charmed world, the elders see a union between a white lighter and a witch literally as an abomination. So this child has been outcast because she's, according to them, an abomination. She can make portals, or she can... You can't say... It's so hard. I just wish you could say orb, but she can't because it's not really orbing. She can do the same thing that Harry does, but like Paige, and I do like the fact that they brought this little bit over from the original show. Her portaling, I guess we should call it, is mixed. The way she does it is mixed with her actual power. Just like with Paige, her orbing was mixed. You know, she couldn't telekinetically move objects the way that Prue did, just moving them. She had to orb them from place to place. That's how her telekinesis worked. And it's kind of the same thing with this chick. She has apparently the power, some sort of lightning or electricity-based power, and when she portals, the electricity swarms around her portal. So it's kind of like it's an interesting dynamic, and I'm glad that they kind of incorporated that part of the rules. You know, the half and half powers like they did with Paige. And apparently this witch, whose name is Lena, I think, she is part of a rogue sect of witches called the Sarkana, which is really a tight, like a abbreviated way of saying the Sisters of Arcana. And according to her, they are witches who do not believe in following the elders' rules. Like, they're not evil. They kind of follow the beat of their own drum. Like, they don't believe in the high-end mightiness of the elders. They don't believe that a white lighter and a witch, if they have a baby, that baby is an abomination. They're basically not assholes. Like, in their mind, the elders are assholes. And it seemed to them like the elders were trying to control everything they did, and they would easily hang another witch out to dry and or kill a witch if they went against the elders' rules. And they didn't like that, so they broke off to form their own sect. Now, according to the elders, when they asked Charity to come down for help, and Mel tells her that this chick is supposedly from the Sarkana, she's like, no, we defeated them before, you know, it's impossible. And the look that she and Harry share right at that moment tells you there's something that they're not saying. But whatever it is about the Sarkana, obviously, is very emotionally resonant between the two of them, which will be revealed later in the episode. So while that is going on, Maggie is trying to win herself a summer internship in Chicago by working for this company who has developed some sort of dating app. And they're having this contest that whoever signs up the most people on the app gets the free paid summer internship in Chicago. Now, at the same time, while she's doing this, her boyfriend, Parker, aka Demon Dude, says to her, you know, my family has, my father has a Chicago office, and I usually spend the summers there. And really, he likes you enough that he's offering you there's a paid internship right there. You know, we could be in the same city, we can be together and hang out and do all sorts of stuff. And of course, to her, this is super cool, but Maggie, being the independent person she is, she wants to feel like she's a success on her own terms. Like, she wants to get where she's going on her own terms. So she says, that's really awesome. And if I was a different person, I probably would accept it, but I want to be able to do this my way. I want to win this thing on my own. Besides, even if I'm not working at the company, I'm still being in Chicago. We're in the same place, right? So it's really not that different. He's like, well, yeah, okay, cool. He's trying to be cool about it. But when he goes to discuss it with his dad, and apparently not that the demon was the shapeshifter, but I was mistaken. um, the older brother, who's just as much of an asshole as their father, if not more, are chiding him for being weak and not being able to convince her. Like, how could you not? You're giving this chick is a townie who's never been out of Hilltown ever, let alone been on a plane, who is probably flat broke, barely making any money. You're offering her, what amounts to the trip of a lifetime in Chicago, in an amazing place that she's never seen before, for the whole summer, and it's paid, blah blah blah, and you couldn't get her to accept it. Seriously? Because they were offering her this trip under the guise that she would come out there and that they would be able to get her a loan in order to do the plasma thing. But I think what Parker realizes is that he has to come at Maggie from another direction. That if he's going to get her to give up the plasma, he has to do it the approach has to be right. It can't just, it has to be done in a certain way. He has to appeal to Maggie's emotions. They're chiding him because they think that he's gone soft, that they think he has a thing for her, and it's obvious that he does. It's obvious he doesn't like doing what he's doing. I think the only reason that he does what he does is, one, because he's desperately wants the acceptance of his father, even though it's really not worth it because his father's a jerk. And two, quite frankly, he's dying. Apparently, the plasma is necessary to make some sort of permanent serum that will keep him from dying. So he's just desperate enough that he's willing to do whatever he has to do. So that is, I do like this particular way that they're making this story out. It's very reminiscent of what they did with Cole at the beginning, and that the only reason he was working with the Triad, I mean, yes, he liked to kill witches, but at the point that they introduced Cole, I don't think people realized it as early as season 2, because all they could see when they introduced Cole was Balthazar and witch killer asshole. But I saw it. I could see that they had come at Cole at a point in his life, because he was already almost 100 years old. They had come at him at a point in his life where I don't think the killing of the witches had the same taste that it used to, because he hadn't done it in a long time. I don't think his heart was in it. I think he was doing what he had to do to keep Triad happy, and also because they were offering him his father's soul that they were holding hostage, pretty much. It was literally the only reason he even agreed. Or I think he would have just gone about his Mary. You know what I mean? And this is very much reminiscent of what Parker is going through. I think the only reason he's agreeing to what his father is asking him to do is, one, because he wants his father's love, and two, because he's desperate not to die. But as much as he would like to think that he doesn't have feelings for Maggie, it's pretty obvious that he does. I would have liked to have seen the development a little slower, so it would seem a little more natural, because right off the bat he seemed like a super cool dude, whereas he seemed like really nice, sweet, kind Parker, and you notice they had chemistry right off the bat. Whereas with Cole and Phoebe, it was very they were very opposite. And that's kind of what attracted them, is that they were very much opposite. And it took a little time for Cole to realize how deep he had really fallen. So hopefully they won't tie that up too quick, that they'll stretch that out a little bit more. I would like to see where that particular plot line goes, as long as they don't fuck it up the way they did with Phoebe and Cole. honest to God, Cole deserves so much better. I really hope that Parker does not go down that same road, because he seems like a very interesting character, and if they were to continue this plot and keep him an interesting, developing character, then it would, it would keep people watching. And the dating app that she's trying to get people to sign up with is a direct correlation to what's going on in the demon world. So on Macy's end, on Macy's end, she's been spending an inordinate amount of time at the lab, like to the point where even the boss is calling her a workaholic, and the boss is like, you should go spend some time with your family, go on a date. When your boss is telling you to get the fuck out, that's when you spend way too much time at work. And for Macy, it's because the lab is her safe place, like her escape, from all the craziness of the world. But it's difficult because, Galvin is there, and there's some part of her that still wants that opportunity. And then when she finds out that Galvin is no longer dating whoever that chick was, and that he's single again, she thinks, well, the bigger part of her wants the second chance, but because of the symbol his grandmother put on him, she feels like there's no room for her, that it's not going to work. But Maggie somehow convinces her to at least sign up for the app, even if she never uses it, to at least sign up for the app and maybe consider the possibility of going on a date. So she, in fact, does use the app to go on a date. And prior to her doing this, there have been a number of disappearances in town. Random people. But what it turns out is that it's not as random as one would think. It actually has to do with the dating app. Now, at first, I had the suspicion that whatever that the witch let loose from the underworld was probably the creature that was committing all these murders, but that's not actually true. The people that were in charge of the dating app were actually demons in disguise. They were, I guess, what was called cicada demons. That's like why the title is called Bugaboo, because the demons are bug-like creatures, and they're using the dating app as a way to procreate, to mate, to further their species. But they're having to kill humans to do it. Like they'll grab humans, wrap them in cocoons until they lay eggs, and then after they lay eggs, the humans die, and the eggs eventually hatch and become more demons. It's really disgusting. So that's why all these people have wound up disappearing. They're using the dating app to get people. And the latest person to use the dating app is, Macy. So the sister's got to find her and save her before she gets killed. Now, the way that they figure out that whoever did the killing was a demon is Charity, Harry, and Mel go to the crime scene, and Mel uses her powers to freeze everybody so she could get into the car and do a little CSI. Again, I have to say, the use of the powers on this show is pissing me off. These girls have only had the powers for 8 episodes. And in real time, showtime, that's maybe 2 months. It's not enough time for them to be able to have that sort of control over their abilities. I understand that today's audience wants things quick, but it's not a positive direction. It does a real disservice, and for the show, for the characters most of all, because you're not given the chance to see them develop into their powers and develop as witches and as women naturally. It's just there. And honestly, her freezing the area where the murder took place, anybody else that passes by, and this is evidenced by the fact that the witch chick walks by and sees Mel there because she's been following her, but walks by. So everything outside of that scene is not frozen. So anybody that's walking by could virtually see this going down. An entire area frozen solid. What the fuck, people? Like, what the fuck? The entire... eight seasons of the previous Charmed. And yes, I know that there was a lot of cleanup that had to be done because of the girls vanquishing demons and warlocks, but they did work pretty hard at making sure that they weren't found out. The whole thing in season 3, when Prue died, the only reason that happened the way it did was because they saved an innocent person's life. And oh my God, oh my God. Wow. Okay. That reminds me, aside from the fact that I still have issues with their powers, because Macy was able to move a very specific object to a very specific place without any struggling whatsoever, and yeah. Prue couldn't do that very well. At least not with that amount of intense accuracy until she was able to use her powers with her hands. When the show first started, she only used it with her eyes. She would squint and things would move. And when she did that, it wasn't very accurate. It was just a purely defensive way of moving somebody across a room or moving an object really fast to hit somebody to defend herself. But actually intricate movement to move an object from one place to the next or to make a certain thing happen through movement did not really come until season 2 when she was able to use her hands. And if you remember when they were fighting those hush demons in the sewers and Piper got knocked out and she was down in that sewer grate and there was no way to get her out because it was too deep and she was unconscious, that was the first time Prue had used her hands to use her power, and she levitated Piper up with her hands out of that sewer grate. That sort of intricate work did not happen for an entire... It took the entire first season before that actually occurred. They had just started into season 2 before that fucking happened. Seriously, people. This shit needs to happen at a much more normal, realistic pace. This is fucking ridiculous. Okay, so while they're at the crime scene, Mel says to Charity, shouldn't we be helping the police try to solve this murder? Because this is demonically related and everything. And they're like, Charity's like, if we had to deal with all the ills of the world, we would never get anything done. And Harry says to her, it's not our lot to interfere with the human world. When it comes to human violence or murder, whatever, that's best left to the police. We deal with the demonic stuff. What the fuck? So these innocent people who are dying mean shit to you? Like, nothing? In the original show, when the Charmed ones helped innocents, it didn't always have to do with demons. It wasn't them helping people wasn't just because something demonic or warlock-like was interfering in these people's lives. Sometimes it was just circumstance that brought them into a situation which gave them a chance to help someone that needed help. And it didn't always necessarily have to do with magic. It was just because that's who they were. They were good people who wanted to help other people. And I think that these girls want that too. But when you're stuck at the beck and call of this elder chick who thinks that nobody else matters except witches, it's like, why? Why? That was first evidenced by the fact that they literally turned an innocent man into a murderer, left him to die. Well, he was already dead, but turned him into a murderer. And they were willing to not give a shit about what happened. They were willing to take down the demon that was killing people, but they weren't willing to, or who was disappearing people, but they weren't willing to do what they had to do to find these people. All they cared about was just taking down the demon. They could care less about what actually happened to the people. It's like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Really? A major point of the show was protecting innocence. That was literally in the Book of Shadows. That was part of their destiny. This show is, this version of the show, like, innocents are an afterthought at best. And that really irritates the shit out of me. Like, really, really. But then again, Charity irritates the shit out of me, too. The actress is really good in her more emotional moments, but even then, sometimes it sort of comes off as superficial and not entirely truthful. So, anyway, you could already tell by then when she said, we have to leave human endeavors to the humans, that Mel was starting to think, this ain't right. She's questioning, there's a scene in which Mel's at work and she's taking out the trash out behind the bar, and a woman is accosted and is about to have her purse snatched by some jerk, and she wants to use her powers to freeze them or to make him stop, but she can't use them in public, so she doesn't do it. And then the Sarkana witch that had been following her shows up and blasts this guy in front of her, saves her life, gets her purse back, takes the memory away so she won't remember anything, and then sends her on her way. So she does it without impunity, like doesn't even think twice about it. She doesn't hurt him. The guy's not dead. She just incapacitates him to save the girl. And doesn't really think about the consequences. Just knows that what she's doing is right. That's kind of what the original Charmed ones would have done. They might not have. That's one thing I always wondered. When they saved humans using witchcraft, did they let the humans have that memory, or did they take the memories away? It was very rare that you got to see those, like, what the consequences were. But they at least gave enough of a shit about humans. I mean, honestly, if that was Pearl Piper, Phoebe, or Paige, they would not have let some dude try to snatch her purse and just stand there and watch. Fuck no! They would have done something. Even if they couldn't use their powers, each one of the three of them had self-defense skills. I know Mel has self-defense skills. She's punched people in the face before, but she wasn't close enough at that moment to do so. She could have run over and done some shit. Hell, she could have taken the massive ass trash bag and belted him across the fucking back with it. But she did. What the fuck? And that's another crack in the mirror of sorts of whether or not, Mel's starting to see the argument that this witch is making. The other thing about what she's saying that kind of speaks to her was the fact that apparently their mother was an ally of this group. Even though she was an elder, she was an ally. So Mel's kind of torn whether or not to believe what they're saying or to be against them, because according to Charity and Harry, this group doesn't care about anybody, and they'll step on anybody to get their way, and they'll kill anybody they have to kill, and they don't care who they destroy. Because according to them, when the big surprise is that Fiona, the woman who Harry had mentioned, who was his prior charge, the one that he had lost because she went public with what she was, and then they thought she was crazy and put her in an institution, and she killed herself. She's actually Charity's sister. So this is a reason why Charity has a hatred of the Sarkana, because she believes that they threw her to the wolves and left her to die in the institution instead of trying to save her. And at first I'm kind of like, okay, I get where she's coming from. But when you hear her speak of it, it sounds very, like, rehearsed. So, what we come to find out is that Fiona may not be dead. So, long story short, in the major part of the story, they stop the cicada demons from feeding off those people and they save Macy. But the part B story is that Charity, instead of asking Mel to take down the Sarkana, she wants them to infiltrate the Sarkana. I mean, the Sarkana working this whole time to try to recruit her. So she says, I want you to find them and tell them that you want in. Because apparently she thinks that's the way for the elders to get the information that they need, is to have someone on the inside. So she goes looking for them, and they find her. They knock her out, or one of the other ones knocks her out. And when that happens, the one that's been following her says to her, why'd you do that? And she's like, well, I couldn't have her find Fiona. And I'm like, what? Does that mean that she's alive? Dun, dun, dun. So, as good of an actress as Charity, or as the actress is in Charity's emotional scenes, I still feel like there's something she's not saying. My personal belief, this is just a theory now, is that when Fiona wanted to come clean and tell the world what she was, that Fiona wouldn't let her. And that Fiona made the institution happen. Fiona stuck her there and left her there and probably sold some lie to Harry to make him believe that Fiona went there of her own, or that the humans dragged her there and that the Sarkana let it happen. I don't think that's the way that it happened. Because you could tell, this is actually the first time that you get to see the elders and where it is that they congregate. So apparently, you don't see their faces. Their faces are conveniently blanked because they're trying to protect themselves from attacks. Since a number of elders, including the girl's mother, has been murdered. So, and they believe that the Sarkana are the ones that are responsible. But Mel is not so sure. So when they take Mel up there to talk to her and tell her that they want her to infiltrate, they explain to her what happened with Fiona. But when Charity explains it, it doesn't ring necessarily true. Like, it doesn't... There's something about it that feels fishy. And that obviously winds up being true, because now there's a possibility that Fiona is alive. So I guess we'll see more of that story as the season goes on. I have a feeling the elders are going to wind up being like the baddies of this particular season, because there's something about them that are it's just fishy as fuck. And I feel bad for Harry, because I think Harry's being used. Seriously, being used. I think Fiona did not ascribe to her sister's beliefs, and she paid the price for it. I think this Sarkana faked her death and got her out of there because it was the only way that she could be protected from her sister's wrath. That's what I think. But I suppose we'll see. Now, this Part C storyline, again, is the whole Parker deal. So Parker decides to appeal to Maggie's emotions. They go out on a date, and he's obviously not looking very well. And when she notices that he's not well, he says that he's trying to do some sort of new plasma therapy, but he's having trouble finding a donor. And she's like, say no more. I'll be more than happy to donate plasma. And that's exactly what he needed to hear, you know. And even though she has a fear of the needle, she gets over it and she donates. And while Mel is there with her, Mel donates as well, just to, do a nice thing. So now they have blood from all three of the girls, which is exactly what they needed to fix him, I guess. So that situation is not getting any better anytime soon. On the Macy end, once she comes out of this horrible date with this person who's not even fully human, she realizes that the person she really wants is Galvin. So she gives him a call and asks him to come meet her for a drink or for coffee. And he's like, "You sure you're actually going to show up?" And she's like, "Well, I'm already here at the bar. I wait for you." So despite the fact that he has this sigil on his back that's supposed to protect him from demons, she still wants to try. But before he's even able to get there, he's texting her as he's walking, which, okay, Galvin, you should know better. He's crossing the street, texting her that he's on his way, and he gets hit by a car. Now, I don't know if that's just because he was dumb enough to text and walk, or if that's karma, or the sigil trying to keep him away from her. I don't know. But I suppose we will see come next week. Now, I'm fairly certain that next week's episode is probably going to be the last, like the last before the show goes on winter break. So yeah, I like how the mythology is developing a little bit better. That was one of my sticking points. I felt like the show didn't have enough of a mythology. Now it feels like it's developing more as they find out more about their mother's background. I like this interesting mythology with Macy and what's going on with her and Galvin as far as that symbol that's on his back and where that's going. I think that could be interesting if done properly. I even like the subplot with Maggie and Parker, as long as they don't go down the same Phoebe and Cole road like what happened before. I think, as I've said, I'm a very vocal Cole supporter. I always felt as though Cole got the fucking shaft, and that Phoebe, fucked him over big time. So the individual plot lines are just ridiculous stories about them dating. I want the girls to develop more as women and not just as millennials, So I like that their individual storylines all have some semblance of importance. Like with Mel, it's trying to understand what happened to her mother and finding out the truth, with this new group of witches. I feel like that's going to have a very deep effect on her personally. I like the relationship with Maggie and Parker, and like I said, I hope that they do it justice and don't go down that road with Cole, because Phoebe completely fucked Cole over immeasurably, and he deserved better, or he deserved to at least be able to die on his own terms. So hopefully they will not screw this poor kid over in that same way. So I'm interested in seeing where their three different personal stories go. I think it's interesting. It seems like they've really begun to develop as individuals. I even like the dynamic between Harry and Charity. I just don't like Charity as a person. I don't trust her. There's some shit about her that's just shady. And I feel sorry for her because I actually do like Harry a lot. Even though he's a bit bland at times, that there is an emotional depth to him. And you get to feel more for him as a person. So I would hate to see him be crushed by Leslie has a great deal of affection for. I would hate to see that happen. So anyway, that is the end of my review for episode 8. And I will see you guys next week for episode 9. All right. Bye, guys.